The content of this podcast, Generation Mom, is for entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and their guests are their own and do not constitute professional advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, this podcast is not intended to replace or substitute for any professional, medical, financial, legal, or other advice. Always seek the advice of a qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding your specific situation. Thanks for listening.
And I think that the hustle culture is so dead, in my opinion. I mean, I don't want to hear anything about girl bosses ever again.
Yeah.
I mean, we are tired, we are busy, that's no way of living. And so to have time to build your life so that you have time. I mean, remember hobbies, remember those.
Hello and welcome to Generation Mom. I'm Rachel, the elder millennial who tries to stay grounded in all of the chaos of modern parenthood.
I'm Pam, the boomer mom to my two co-hosts and Nana to their kids. I've seen it all, and I'm here to share my generational wisdom with a touch of tough love.
And I'm Laurel, your Gen X voice of reason, stuck in the middle, ready to weigh in with unsugar-coated advice.
Join us as we tackle life's big questions across 3 generations, sharing laughs and insights along the way. This is Generation Mom. Hello and welcome back to Generation Mom. I'm so excited. We have Pam and Laurel here, but today we are also joined by 2 special guests. We have Elizabeth Kendig and Kate Rogers with us. They both write the Substack, and I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong because I'm from the South. Femmes Quotidienne. Did I do okay with that?
Nailed it.
If you're in the South, it's Les Femmes Quotidienne.
We're gonna steal that.
Yes. When they aren't penning the sub, Kate leads digital strategy for MSPC Content Agency, making magic for iconic brands while heroically raising twin boys. Oh my goodness. Wow. And Elizabeth is the co-author of Chase You, an editorial director, award-winning blogger, and skincare creator who you may know as Beauty Bets or the host of Healers podcast. They bonded a decade ago in a shared cubicle outside of the office lunchroom and haven't touched microwave popcorn since. Although they now live 2,000 miles apart, with Kate in Minneapolis and Elizabeth in the Bay Area, when they do get together, nothing can pry them from Kate's kitchen counter with its bottomless conversation, pimento cheese dip, and French chard, which sounds amazing, and I would love to join that sometime if we're ever in, make a trip to Minneapolis. Oh, welcome. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you. You are welcome anytime.
Awesome.
Open invitation. Thank you for having us. It's so fun to be here.
Thank you.
You can tell us how good our pimento cheese is, even though we don't make it ourselves. Yeah.
Well, see, I'm a weird Southerner because I'm the only one who was born here in my family. The rest are from my dad. We told you is from Minneapolis, and then my mom is from Bay City, Michigan. So I'm like a hybrid of the two. My mother-in-law knows, she's a true Southerner and knows how to make pimento cheese, but I'm excited to try it.
It's a good hybrid.
Such a good hybrid. So I know Elizabeth from back in the Healers Wanted days. I was on her podcast, which feels like not that long ago, but it was many years ago. And so that's how we know each other. And she and Kate, I've been following their Substack and loving it, especially any beauty advice, because I'm always looking for products because I know nothing about it. But I love beauty products. And their advice is awesome. And we are also in the, what do you call it? I'm having a senior moment here, but in the advice business. There you go. So I was excited to have them on. And also, I really love the story of how you started LFQ. But before we jump into that, I wanted each of you to share, which generation do you identify with?
X through and through.
Yeah, you are unambiguously X.
Yes, I am. I am 1977. My senior moment is that I hold X very dearly. I
Yes.
identify, I listen to the singles soundtrack to this day. I am Yeah, if I could wear flannels, all the time, I would, tied around my waist. But times have changed in that department. But yeah, Gen X. Kate, I had to think about that with you. I feel like you're
Well,
cusp or you're
so I'm cusp. So I'm with Rachel. So it depends if what definition we go with. I was born in April of 1981. So, and by some measure, that's an old millennial or the oldest, but sometimes I see it starting at 82 or in 82.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I feel I identify with this exennial generation, our micro generation. I feel like my sympathies and, my husband's 4.5 years older than I am. I feel like I probably am an Xer at heart, but certainly feel this crossover space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. You're a year older than I am, Elizabeth. You're a year older than Laurel. I think we both can very much relate.
You're younger.
You're younger. Yeah,
You're younger.
you're
Yeah.
younger. So, I don't know which we should jump into first. Let's talk a little bit. I guess we'll start with the present. How LFQ came to be.
Well, I will take that. This is Elizabeth. You'll get to know my voice. I probably sound more Minnesotan than Kate, even though I don't live there anymore. Like you said in your lovely intro, I was a blogger for years, a magazine editor for years. So, then moved into podcasting. So content creation is just something that I just feel the need to do in whatever form. And it always is taking a new form. And it had been a while since I made something. And so that was sort of niggling feeling that I was very much trying to ignore because I was on a break from that after writing a book. And enough people, and Rachel, you and I have talked about, so many spiritual conversations. But once you get those breadcrumbs and those signs enough times with people saying, why don't you do a Substack? Do you have a Substack? You should write a Substack. I realized I needed to pay attention to that. And Substack is really, it's a new platform, but it's a way of publishing newsletters, and it can serve as a blog. It can serve as your website. It's just a really fantastic, slick tool for anyone who wants to start something. The real tipping point was that I was working with an executive coach, and he looked at me one day and said, I need you to make something. That is your homework. And I need you to not have it be a business or put any pressure on yourself to monetize it, because that's what you do. And you are in a creative funk and you are trying to get from A to Z in your head before you make the next thing. And how is it going to be a business? And because that's what all of my content platforms have been businesses in the end. And so I have forgotten how to just make something for the love of it, for the joy of it. And so I think I was home in Minneapolis, drinking our Chardonnay and eating our pimento cheese, probably some fried chicken, and was telling Kate about this. And she sort of was in her Kate way, like, um, that I would like to do that with you. Would you ever consider doing that together? And Kate is not shy, but she knows that like I have had my things and I have done them solo, which was the other piece, is that I hadn't considered writing with someone else on a regular basis. And I'm getting chills right now, because if there's anyone that I would be willing to do that with, creatively, professionally, emotionally, it would be Kate. And so we have had a shorthand since the day we met, and that really pushed me over the edge. And the second we started working on it together, it just was, it's been an absolute treat. So, Kate, thanks for being my partner in crime.
Oh,
Yeah,
always.
tell I will stop talking. How about that?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like the way we got to this is different for each of us. But once we sort of feel like in the, through over the course of our friendship, we've always kind of had an idea of, oh yeah, maybe we should do something, but never anything very serious. And me personally, I would always feel too stressed to even take on what that might look like, or, just kind of a non-starter, even if it was there. And then so when Elizabeth kind of got this message from her coach, make something, and then we talked about it when she was home, I feel like it came together really fast after that. All of a sudden we were like, oh my gosh, we could do this, we could do this. And we kind of were back and forth and then stumbled on the format. And then we just both gave ourselves permission to just try it and just, see how it feels. And like Elizabeth saying, kind of doing it without this business pressure and just do it for the sake of doing. So we jumped in. I mean, this is unlike me to do, but I think I realized that I was feeling the same kind of, yearning to just create something and to write for the sake of writing and to kind of pull in the things that we think about all the time and talk about with our friends in a format that's just really friendly and liberating. I don't know. It's been really fun.
I would imagine it's similar to how this podcast came together. I mean, you three are talking about the things you already talk about, right? Around your kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, we keep going back to, if we don't want to get out of bed and do it, if we don't actually want to write about it, there's no SEO algorithm.
Right.
I mean, we definitely pay attention to what our readers love because they are a very loyal and engaged group. But we already know that they will love and care about the same things we do because we've already seen that. And so, and also you cannot fake it. There is just, or we don't want to. I mean, I think that that's like the creative message to anyone thinking about doing anything. Like, the second you start faking it or something through that's not really you, it's rarely successful, and also it's a total energy drain. And we just decided we're not doing anything we don't want to do. That's us in our 40s too. We're not doing anything we don't
Right.
want to do. So an Xer and me. But yeah, it's just been fun. Just been fun.
I feel like, Elizabeth, I do have to share. My husband, Marty, did tell us, his name is Matt, but we call him Marty. 3 or 4 years ago, he was like, you two should do a newsletter together. Why don't you just do a newsletter? And we both were kind of like, rolled our eyes and like moved on. And then here we are.
Marty's probably taking credit. He will soon find out when we have our husbands on LFQ. They'll realize that, why maybe we were resisting, because it still is work. It still is.
That's right.
It takes effort.
We keep joking about having a Generation Dad episode and bring our husbands on. my dad's like, it's not called Generation Dad. I don't want to be on. But we are like, they need to see what we're doing. My husband finally started listening, and it's funny. We did an episode on the mental load, and I've noticed he must have listened to it because he's been helping out a lot more around the house.
Oh, that's really sweet. I love that.
Laurel, I think you were going to ask a question. Did you?
Oh God, I've got a whole list already.
Good. Laurel's our interviewer. She's so good at interviewing. I think she missed her calling, but
there's still time.
That seems to be the story of my life. But I wanted to know, you said you kind of talk about things that are interesting to you, but do you have like a central theme to your newsletter that you try to kind of tie into? And how did you guys come to that agreement, and how has that grown and blossomed? How true do you stick to it? Like, do you talk about ghost stories too when you kind of say that would be fun? Or
it's a good question. There's a couple questions in there, I think.
Yeah.
We were fairly resistant with what we really wanted to do in the beginning. LFQ, we called it an advice conversation. So it embodies the kind of conversations that Kate and I have with each other about whatever is on our mind. And that can be as meaty as being annoyed for like a year that certain friends weren't texting me back. So Kate and I had long exchanges about that. Or it can be as simple as like, I need to find hiking boots for a trip. So sort of like text exchanges that you already have with your friends, and like looking at what are people coming to us with, friends, family. And I get a lot of questions because I've been a lifestyle editor and a beauty writer. And so I just get those questions from people in my circle. But we did sort of go, oh, who are we to be advice columnists? Like, how are we going to say that? That feels so weird. And until we really sat down and wrote like our about page and let ourselves own it, we're like, well, we're in our 40s and this is really how it goes. And we don't have to be Dear Abby to still have a point of view and to have an expertise. I mean, Kate has incredible taste and I have very strong opinions about the best egg salad. And so we're going to put those out there and you can take it or leave it. But those conversations were already happening. So we just memorialize them.
It's kind of what we did too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so, as an extra, I have to ask, are blogs still a thing?
Uh,
Are still a thing.
Great question.
Because that was a big thing right around the time I had my first son, and I started a blog and then got derailed when we started having a lot of our personal issues. And then by the time I came back up for air, like everything was YouTube. And so, I, at least in the, sort of circles I go in, it's all YouTube now and all the blogs have kind of died off. So I'm just curious, like, that people are still reading blogs or, looking at blogs or whatever.
They are still a thing. I mean, I started blogging in 2009 or 2008, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and I that's when blogs were just getting started and I know some of those original bloggers still have blogs today. I will say it's a lot more work in that they need to tend to all of the social media channels and all of the ways that they get in front of their readers. So my guess, and I've seen some of them move to Substack because people don't go to beautybets.com anymore to read the blog. If I had one, they get it in an email and then that prompts them to go to the blog. Or you see something on Instagram and there's a link in the bio and then you go to the blog. So I don't think everyone is proactively visiting blogs. They might not even realize that there's a blog behind that writer or that influencer. So the approach has changed, but yeah, they exist. It's not something that I think anyone needs to just start necessarily because it's a lot of work to drive people to that. That's why YouTube is like it's a video blog, right? It's a vlog unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I think that's what's so nice about the Substack platform. That is kind of reminiscent of what blogging was like in the, 2009 when they were just getting going. It's really friendly for writers. And Elizabeth and I were interested in writing. We're not really out to develop an audience or we're not out to, by no measure do we think of ourselves as influencers. Absolutely not. But just we're kind of looking for a place to share experience and kind of, like we're saying, this framework of an advice conversation really works well for what we're looking to do. We're not trying to make short form video content, at least at this
Right.
time.
Well, I really love that. And I love this idea of, creating something to create it. And I don't know, I feel like it might be a Gen Xer and a Zennial kind of thing. I feel like anytime I've made anything, there's been this pressure to monetize it or to make it make money. And being sort of having a toe in the coaching world for a while, it's all like, build your audience and make the sale and get. And so I think, for me, I also was in this place of like, right now, I just want a job that I like enough that will sort of let me be able to be with my family and then be able to just make something like this podcast and not have to have that pressure of the SEO and we have a joke of an Instagram page right now where we're like barely tending to it, but like, we promote the podcast, but right now I'm just like, let's just create it, get it out there. And then, we'll think about maybe the next step. So,
But even
um,
Instagram's become frustrating because, it used to be
mhm.
you tag your, pictures or whatever you're putting up there, and, it would be like in a list. And now it's like you go to those tags, it's the same 10 things at the top of the list. You used to be able to
Right.
switch it to recent or whatever, and you can't even do that anymore. So I'm like, what is the point now? Like, why am I tagging these things if I can't even find them? So
that's
I
what's
don't
nice
know how to
about
get around
having
that yet.
a podcast or a Substack. We all own our content. We're not
Mhm.
reliant on social media platforms that can change and they do change constantly and you're at their mercy. So I think you're doing it right, Rachel. And I think that the hustle culture is so dead, in my opinion. I mean, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to hear anything about girl bosses ever again.
Yeah.
I mean, we are tired, we are busy, we like that's just not that's no way of living. And so to have time to build your life so that you have time. I mean, remember hobbies?
Mm-hmm.
Remember
Yeah.
those?
Yeah.
Those are from the 80s. And so this is also a hobby that happens to be you're still using a lot of your professional knowledge at the same time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's what we're doing. And so it feels meaty and juicy and of our minds. I hope like all of us are like, well, maybe it will take off. Maybe it will be something. And
Right.
someone gave us, Kate, I can't remember who said this, but the thing will tell you what it wants to be. Your podcast is going to
Mm-hmm.
tell you what it
Yeah.
wants to be. LFQ is going to tell us
Yes.
what it wants to be. Like we are giving this creative body of work license to become what the world needs and
Mm-hmm.
wants instead of pushing and pushing and pushing on it to be something.
Yeah.
I think this is a great change because, you know, in my generation, we were brought up to feel that if you were not going to make money from something or be a success, which equated to money also, that it wasn't worth doing it. And I think that your generations have really flipped that on its head and said, well, wait a minute, we want to be happy. We want to enjoy what we're doing because a lot of us got into jobs that we really didn't enjoy, but we made money and we looked successful. But I think that definition of being successful has really kind of changed. And I think it's wonderful that people can do things that they love, and not worry so much about how much money they're going to make or how successful the world is going to think they are.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's nice just to enjoy it for yourself.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's just it, Pam. That's really right. And it's been so enriching. I think that's the part I enjoy the most is actually, just going back and forth with Elizabeth and we're both in the document, kind of where, the craft itself. That's been really satisfying. I mean, I would say I feel like I've always been sort of fiercely anti hustle culture. I've never really had that mindset, nor have I approached side hustles and with any seriousness and I don't know, I really appreciated listening to your episode work work work, and I could really identify with things that all three of you said about your career journey and certainly recognize that my own is fraught. I mean, that's another reason that I think LFQ came to be, because Elizabeth and I are both just asking ourselves like, okay, we're in our 40s now, and is this what we wanted? Is this what we meant? We've got a ways to go. I'll be working for some time, but I'm constantly like, God, how did I get here? Like, is this what? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to say other than I just really appreciated hearing your takes. And I just love the cross generational interplay because there are generational influences here.
Mhm. Yeah, there definitely are. I'd love to hear from both of you. We sort of shared in that episode how our views of success have changed. And I'd love to hear from both of you how your view of success has changed and maybe a little bit about sort of your own career journeys. Because I think, I definitely started out thinking I was going to climb the corporate ladder, and those priorities shifted as I got into my 40s, definitely. So I'd love to hear your own stories. Either one can go.
Such a big one.
That's a
I
big
know.
one. I can start since I go further back, a little bit further back than Kate. Gen X, I thought about this. Thank you for that thought starter. I was very squarely in the generation of girls can have, do, be anything, particularly in math and science. So academically, it was, I mean, you can if you have good grades in math and science, like let's get you into engineering. Like there was support nationally for this. And so we're hearing that, and then at the same time I'm hearing from my incredible parents like you can be anything. And so I found that having sky's the limit and also all the opportunities in the world, which they created for me. And also like I was, doing well in school, having too many options and also that much pressure that I could be, I mean, whatever. I didn't want to be the president, but like was almost paralyzing for many years for me.
Mhm.
The pressure was enormous, and I will fully own that I put the pressure on myself because there's also like a lot of psychology around if someone tells you you're smart and someone tells you you are capable and have limitless potential, suddenly that backfires. like the,
Debilitating.
yeah, it was debilitating. So I think it's only recently that my identity and my life force and where I feel my self-worth and validation are not completely wrapped up in my career. And I could pretend that they're not, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's the thing that has always felt like it will make or break me. When things are going well, I'm high on life. When things are not going well professionally, it's devastating. And so I've really had to work through that. And I do remember when I started dating my husband, he said, and I was working with Kate at MSPC and I was still running this like beauty empire. And I say that, loosely, but he said, that 80 hours a week is not going to be conducive to a relationship. Right. And I was like, what? I don't understand. Like that's just what I do. And I know I said I'm not hustle culture, but it didn't feel like hustle. It just felt like work was just what was feeding me so much. And my takeaway today is that is like what Pam said. I care way more now. I've checked all those boxes. I've achieved the things that I wanted to achieve up until this point. And um now I'm more focused on how what I'm doing makes me feel and how it supports my life and the things that I value and prioritize. And but that's taken, like, it's been an extraction for sure. And so I think, you gave sort of my career journey, so I won't keep talking on this, but yeah.
Well, Elizabeth, I
Yeah.
can just
Okay, you can
really
cut me off. Thank
vouch
you.
for the way that your relationship with Ty has changed your whole orientation toward how you work, how you spend your time, how you protect your time, how you really work on and prioritize, cultivating your connection with Ty and making sure that that gets space. And just, I mean, I first met you when you were doing the 80 hours around the clock thing. And to some extent, I was doing that as well, but in a different way. And that you do burn out. I mean, I am incapable of working the way I worked when I was in my 20s and
Mhm.
30s. I just don't have it in me anymore. And I think that's okay. And I think there's really something to this idea that like that much time in, another generational thing that I think is shifting because my younger colleagues don't see it that way at all. They don't really, they sort of frown upon extra time and in a way that is, I think, has positives and negatives. But so I don't know. I do not have a terrific definition for success right now. I feel like I'm in a very transitional moment in my career. I'm, part of a leadership team. And so kind of my journey as a leader is something that I'm evaluating. I feel like I have a lot more I want to do, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's and Ty is my husband, by the way. It's an interesting juxtaposition. Rachel will let you host too.
Oh no, it's okay. I love it.
But I think we forget that we change as time goes on. There is this trying to get from point A to B, and then you get there. It might be what you thought it was going to be. It might not be, but you're also evolving in the process. So
Mhm.
I don't think, and I can speak for Kate and I, we care deeply about our careers. That is not going to change for me. Like it is, if I'm spending 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, like I still want to love it. I don't think I'm ever going to walk away from just having a job. That's maybe that's a Gen
Mhm.
X thing. I don't know. Maybe that's a maybe that's a Z thing. Like I want my work to challenge me and fulfill me, and it's not going to all the time, just like nothing is going to do that for us all the
Mhm.
time. But it's now like, where does that fit into our lives versus the other way around? Because we are
Right.
tired.
Yes.
We are. So, and once you sort of, okay, now I'm going to go off on my tangent, but like when you have your relationships and they are good, and you have your friendships and you have your spouse or your partner and your kids, and that's like becomes the foundation to get to explore some of these other avenues
Mhm.
professionally and creatively. So I think everyone on this call, everyone on this podcast, like we're in this lovely position to do that now. We've worked really hard to have the life we want, and now it's okay, now what do I really want from my career
Mhm.
when I don't have anything to really prove?
Right. Yeah, there's so much there that I want to say. It's yeah, I feel like I'm in finally at this place, and I've sort of I don't know, it's like I don't know if it's a generational thing, if it goes along with like you can be anything you want to be, but I feel like in my 20s and 30s there was a big push of like do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, or like
Yeah.
do your life's purpose needs to be your job. And like I was there for a while, and then I think I'm at a point now where I'm like I want to like what I do and enjoy what I do and feel proud of it, but I don't think it has to be my life's purpose because I have other things in my life now that are my purpose. But when I was 20, it's like you said, Elizabeth, like I was 20, I was single, I worked 80 hours a week, my job was everything to me. And then when I met my husband and then we started having a family, like that sort of my focus has shifted to more that way. And I feel like sort of at different times in my career and my life, it's sort of like what you focus on grows. So it's like, well, right now I have two little kids. My focus needs to be here, and I need to do something that I still like, but it doesn't have to be my life purpose right now. Like it's what I've been doing. It's PR, which I was very resistant to for a long time, staying in PR and communications, but it's what I'm good at. And it's like, I don't hate it. So it's like, I'm going to
And
keep
that's really
working at
powerful,
this.
right? Of not
Right. I think
hating
it's
it. That's pretty
powerful.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
So I feel like it's that also that shift of like, or that balance between, doing something you love, but it doesn't have to be like world changing either.
No,
So,
no.
yeah.
I don't really think that this is a generational thing. I think this is life. And
Hmm.
I think as you'll find that as you continue to grow and age and your families get bigger, that you evolve with that and your desires change as time goes on. And also, just a fact of life, your abilities also change in terms of, I mean, I'm 76. I am not as spry as I used to be, unfortunately. And, I too used to work long hours and all of that. I couldn't even imagine doing that today. I have to have a nap every afternoon. So I think, you'll find that will happen, as you get older. And I think it's just a part of life. And I think it happens to all of us, no matter what generation we're from.
Hmm. I think something Kate touched on too is I feel like I'm seeing a shift as well in the younger generations, and sort of they value their time more. And I especially what I'm seeing in the corporate world is, whereas we weren't paid to commute in, but we were wasting hours of our life.
Mhm.
Like, I see this younger generation being like, this is my time. And if you want me for this amount of time, this is what I need to be compensated. And there's, good and bad to both of that. But I really feel like maybe it was the pandemic, maybe it's just a different generation, but I feel like they're asking for more than maybe we did in terms of being compensated for their time and not taken advantage of, I guess. Cuz I don't know, when I was in the corporate world, it was like you work 80 hours a week and that's how you get ahead and you're not paid anymore. But I don't know. I feel like there's been a shift there and sort of like wanting companies to value you a little bit more than maybe
Well,
we spoke up for.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would add that, I mean, it did come out of the pandemic in some ways, but they don't have a world that they can count on anymore. They don't have an economy they can count on. They don't have pensions. Nothing is stable. I mean, the job market is tough. And so we could say, if I put this time in, I will climb the ladder. I will get my benefits. I mean, I might work a little bit more, but there was, I think, more reward to it financially. And I mean, I've seen people do the jobs of three in this generation, or be asked to and be taken advantage of. And I've had a lot of younger employees over the years, and some of them, yes, I mean, the entitlement cliche probably exists for a reason, but also, like, I look to them, they're teaching me how to set boundaries, like healthy boundaries. And they're loving their lives and putting their lives first long before we did, and having this conversation now. So hopefully it evens out a little bit.
I hope so.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if it's a net positive or negative, but it is just different, and I
Yeah.
think it's hugely influenced by the pandemic and how everyone is working differently now. But I mean, Rachel, I really identified. I think you talked about your entry level PR role where the expectation is you're going to do all these crap tasks,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's how I've been in roles like that. And so just this, going into it, it's still sometimes hard when I see somebody showing up who is so junior in their career and they seemingly are unwilling to do all those unglamorous things where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what happened to this idea of putting your time in?
Right.
And they do, and there's some very smart people, or talented young people. I love a lot of the young people that I work with, but I don't know, this idea of like an employer brand, like I have a responsibility to make sure that I am creating a culture where people want to be and where they feel
Mm-hmm.
seen and where they feel like they can contribute and they feel taken care of. And I applaud that. I mean, I think Elizabeth
Mm-hmm.
brings up a good point by just how unstable everything is,
Mm-hmm.
and the challenges and stresses that we're all navigating but are more acute maybe for people that are in their 20s now than what it was like when we were getting started. So I don't know, it's a lot, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that maybe it's not a bad thing that there's high expectations on the employer side for what kind of
Yeah.
working space you create.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've seen more of that, especially having my toe sort of in the corporate PR world, and a client I'm working with now, even a lot of the work I do with them is on their employer brand and building their company culture and making sure they're in alignment with that, because it's one thing to kind of talk the talk, but then you have to really implement
Yeah.
everything that you say. And so, I mean, I think there are also, always going to be the companies that do it well and then the companies that really don't do it well. And you hear probably more about the companies that don't do it well in the news. But yeah, it's been interesting to see the shift and then to be on this sort of this end of the career. Not that I'm anywhere close to the end of my career, but just, being further along and thinking back. Let's, because we fancied ourselves in the beginning as an advice podcast, which it's funny you said that about LFQ being an advice conversation, because I feel like that's what this is really morphed into, our podcast. Because at first I was like, we had no listeners, so I'm like pulling questions off Reddit and we're answering them. But I feel like within our conversations, there's advice, and we've just started kind of giving general advice at the end of our conversations. So I'd love to hear from you. What advice would you give your younger self, if you met them today, about career creativity?
Oh man, I'll take this one. I think so. I sometimes kick myself where I don't think that I thought hard enough about what kind of paths I might want. So where I am now, I don't know that it's different than any vision I may have had, because I don't know that I set that up with much clarity. And I think, the one thing that I always enjoyed doing was writing. And so I just kind of followed this writerly track and somehow ended up in a digital strategy space, which makes no sense. But I think they're going back to something that we touched on, kind of my parents, my boomer parents, it was, you can do anything and you are so smart. And I don't, like Elizabeth said, I don't think that was ultimately helpful. I wish that I would have focused a little bit more on the effort and the time into something for an outcome that I earned or that I did. I think being so worried about, being smart or not, or being good, really prevented me from exploring, things a little bit more widely. And I feel like there's probably an entirely different track that may have been better for me.
Yeah, I will piggyback on that. We're saying the same things, but I would tell myself to not focus so much on getting the grades and the
Right.
achievements, but on what are you interested in? What do you care
Mm-hmm.
about? Who are you? Because you know what college is like, and then you get out there into the real world, and I was just focused on the next achievement, but none of that is really guided by us diving into our own psyches and values. And I don't know if it would have gone any differently, but it maybe would have been less painful and more joyful.
I love I love what you both said, and going back to this idea of, growing up. Thank you, Pam, for telling us how smart we were and that we could do everything. I remember being in high school and being mortified because there was, a high school friend of mine, and he was this like very accomplished cello player, but his parents were making him go to medical school, and I remember being just horrified at this thought. And then as I've gotten older, I mean, they still should have let him explore cello, but as I've gotten older, I'm like, why couldn't my parents just told me I had to be a lawyer or doctor or something? Like, I've been sort of trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up for all this time, but I probably would have fought against it even if Pam had told me what to
Well,
be.
You
can I
totally
just
would have.
speak
I
for
would have
the
just done it.
Yeah, Laurel would have done it.
can I just speak for the boomer parents for a minute?
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things that we told our kids, and we all did tell you, you were all, you all could do anything, and especially the girls, because so many limits were put on us. And, when I went to college, pretty much you were going to be a secretary, or you were going to be a receptionist in a doctor's office, or you were going to be a nurse, and that, or a teacher. And that was pretty much, the what your future held for you. And it was or you were going to just be a mother. There was a big push on that too, that you go to college and get your MRS degree. So, I mean, this is how we grew up. And it was just changing, I think, as I went to college. Things were just starting to change, and women were being given a lot more opportunities, and schools and things were opening up to them. But this is where that came from. And I can see where that could be an overwhelming message now, looking back. But at the time, we wanted you to know that you were just as good as any man, and that you could do whatever it was that you put your mind to. So we did do it from a good place, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And that makes so much sense. I mean, that message was necessary to impart, right? And I think, Laurel, you said something about how it's like you it never occurred to you that you wouldn't have a career, and you knew you wanted to be successful, and you knew you wanted to achieve a lot, but just kind of, but what?
Doing what?
And
Yeah.
that really hit home with me.
That's been my whole life, because exactly like you said, it's the achievement and the grades and the getting into the college and doing all the things you need to get into the college. And you know I mean, I certainly wasn't a straight A student, but it was, education and achievement was very much pounded into me. And there was sort of that sense of failure because I didn't make national honor roll, or I wasn't anywhere near the valedictorian, like all of that. But like, you know I have my oldest is so smart, and I see myself putting that on him. And of course, he's a boy, but it's like he'll be the valedictorian someday, because that's like, I can see it, like that's him, and whereas my little one's a little bit more like Rachel was, where he has a million things he wants to do, but I can pinpoint what he's actually talented at. And I let him do as many of the different things. He loves playing soccer, so I let him play soccer every year, even though that kid has no idea what he's doing on that court, but he's having fun, so I let him do it. But like, he has talents that I kind of try to steer him to. They're not necessarily the, like, lucrative career type talents that my parents would have, the more the cello side and not the medical side. But like, that's, I still feel like I need to kind of help steer them to where they're gifted, as opposed to just being like, okay, great, here you go out into the world and make your way. And you're left walking around going, I have no idea what to do. Like, what am I supposed to do now? And the other thing I see from my generation versus like the young millennials and Zers now is, our generation, it was very corporate. Like, you went into a business, you started at the coffee level and you worked your way up, and that was what you're supposed to do. And even today, like, my dad can't seem to understand. My husband jumps from, job to job every few years, and that's the way you get raises now. He hasn't actually gotten a raise in his current job in 3 years, but he got a huge jump when he took this job. So like, my dad sees that as not being loyal and not, sticking with the business and, just stay somewhere and work here 40 years. And that's not how it works anymore, even for us. And then
Right.
the Zers are like making their way on their own, like between the technology they have available to them and their sort of life values, and also in some instances the job market. They're going out there and they're just like, I'm going to do this thing, and they just go do it. And I'm like, who gave you the authority to go do that? Like, what makes you qualified to go just be this thing and do it on your own? And who gave you that education to know to do that? Like, I don't know. They just have this like sense of self that they can just go out there and do anything and do it on their own. And that's amazing, and that's something like I never would have thought to do. And, I can't speak for my whole generation, but, for the most part, that was not an option. So
I mean, I think my kids feel like being a YouTube content creator is a legitimate career
and
path.
it is now.
And it
I
is.
was the kid.
And
My
it is.
parents said, "Get off the game. You're never going to make a money playing a computer game." And can I tell you how many YouTubers I watch on TV now with my kids who are making bajillions of dollars playing games, and my kid sits and watches them play the game. So my kid's not even playing the game anymore. He's sitting watching other people play the game, making money. And I'm like, I could have done this. Why didn't I do this?
Still can. You still can.
Well, now it feels like, and this was one of the questions I was going to ask you too, and Rachel kind of touched on too, is, how do you break into that now that you have, all this competition? Anyone with a computer can write a blog or, do a YouTube or whatever, do a podcast. How do you, especially when you're not trying to monetize it, like break in and say, I'm as good as that person, or someone's going to watch me instead of the 5 million people that are watching them? Like, how do you know, first of all, like, just have the self confidence to do that, and second of all, how do you actually make a go of it when there's all these experts already out there who have cornered that market?
There's going to be someone doing it though. Like with anything creative, you're going to do it differently or you're going to do it better. And you do like that chutzpah, whether you fake it or not. I mean, there's no secret sauce besides just going for it, unless you have the
I feel like
tractor.
we had to ask ourselves that for LFQ, right? Just like, who cares? Like, why would we put this out there? Who cares what we think? Or I feel
Exactly.
this more strongly than Elizabeth does. I will say that. But then we kind of got to this point when we're not doing it for the outcome. We're doing it for the thing itself. And it's like, well, I care what Elizabeth thinks and she cares what I think. And that's enough.
I mean,
When
Rachel,
I
how many
That's
times have
sort
I
of where
said
we
that to
are.
you
yeah, when I
at the
started
table? I'll be like, is
doing
anyone listening?
blogs,
Does anyone care? Why are we doing this? No one cares about us. No one knows us. Like, Why do they care?
Yet.
But you do it for yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's what's really new today. And that is a very foreign idea for, well, especially, you were talking about daddy, but, our generation. You didn't do anything for yourself in the boomer generation. It was all to impress people and get ahead. And I personally think it's much better today that people, can make a YouTube channel, a lucrative living and all of that. I mean, we never even would have, well, we didn't have it back then, but I mean, we would never even have thought about that. So I just think it's the changing of the world. And, you have to sort of, as long as you're on this earth, you have to kind of keep up with each new generation that comes up, because maybe they do have some better ideas than your generation did or the previous generations did. And I think we can all learn from one another, which is a beautiful thing. It really is. If we stop to listen to one another and really appreciate one another.
Pam with the mic drop every time.
I know.
Exactly. That's just it.
So,
Nailed it.
she's always got a good closing argument. Well, I want to thank both of you for your time today, and also give you an opportunity to plug LFQ or anything else you have going on before we say goodbye.
I think that's our number one, and I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. And
Yeah.
like we've talked about, we're not monetizing it, so it's completely free. We send out a letter every other Wednesday, and you can donate if you want to support us, but buy us a mascara, but otherwise it's completely, everyone is welcome at our table.
Awesome. Thank you. There's a lipstick I keep meaning to buy that you wrote about a few weeks ago that just looks amazing. So, well, thank you. We appreciate you so much. We will be reading, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.